Alrighty. Before we start the Pesach Shir, thank you all for all your wonderful feedback, which I did get. Me and Anita got a ton of wonderful feedback on our production this Sunday. It was really spectacular. Anita, so much of it is Anita's, credit, the hard work. But what we accomplished was something unprecedented, something incredible, something so gratifying. We accomplished that. Not only did we put on a production, a show involving 100 different girls and women who sang and danced to excellent, fun, high energy Jewish music and had the greatest time, but there was also in that so much incredible talent that we found in the neighborhood throughout, not only from the yeshivas, but also girls who are unfortunately not in yeshiva and public school, incredible talents. And what we accomplished was not just that these kids and these parents who are part of the Israeli community that honestly, before Keshudi, had nothing to do with our community. We didn't do something for them. They participated in a community project with us as part of the community. And this made them feel, and I know it firsthand because Geulah came to my house, they made them feel for the first time they belong to this community, and everybody, values them, and they can have a part in this community and contribute. And it was a beautiful thing. In general, community is just a strong force in people's lives to have community. Anita found talent. She recruited. She organized. She chose the song. She danced. She danced. And it was an explosion of really positive energy, and it was just amazing. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure working with you.
We're going on from here, Mirza Hashem, further and further. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning.
Thank you.
So, yes, Baruch Hashem, wherever there are going to be DVDs of the whole show. If anybody wants to see the show by DVD, you can let me know. We can get you one. Okay, now we're going to talk about Haggadah. Okay? So Pesach, it's a week and a half or so before Pesach. And generally this time is filled with all kinds of work and energy spent and mental energy spent on all kinds of things that have nothing to do with Pesach. Okay? So if you ask yourself, what should I be spending my time on this week and a half before Pesach? What's the mitzvah of the night? What do I need to accomplish on the night of the Seder and throughout Pesach? That's what we're going to focus on. Okay? If you have a Haggadah, you could jot notes down in your Haggadah, but we have to identify the mitzvah of the night of Pesach, the night of the Seder, and of course the rest of the Yantiv, but specifically the mitzvah of the night of the Seder. And this mitzvah is a pasuk that comes from Perek Yud Gimel in Shemos. It is repeated over and over and over again in this Haggadah, and that is the following pasuk. The pasuk is V'higadata labincha bayom hahu. Tell your children on that day. Okay. Lamor, saying. Okay. You know where you find this? If you have Haggadah, guys, turn to the Russia in the Arba Banim. Okay. Russia ma. Okay. This is the pasuk. Then we'll go back. V'higadata labincha bayom hahu lamor. You should tell your children on that day, saying, Bavur zeh, on account of this, Asa Hashem li b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim. Hashem did great things for me when I left Mitzrayim. So first of all, on account of what? Bavur zeh. What does zeh mean? Well, we know from the Haggadah, okay, that there are 3 simanim on the Seder plate, that if you do not identify what they are for, you haven't fulfilled your obligation on the night. Now, where does that come in the Haggadah? Anyone remember? Yeah, where does that come in? No, it's not in the beginning. No, where does it come in? Right towards the end of Magid. Rabban Gamliel Haya Omer. Rabban Gamliel said, Kol shelo amar shlosha devarim elu, whoever did not articulate these 3 things, B'Pesach, on Pesach lo yatsa yedei chovah, so he did not fulfill his obligation. What are they? Pesach, Matzah, Maror. The things on the Seder plate. The korban Pesach, the matzah that we have, and the Maror. You have to identify these things. And we say, Pesach, Shahayu Avaseinu Ochlim, this Pesach that they used to eat, okay, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Why did they eat the Pesach in the time of the Beis HaMikdash? So what does Rabban Gamliel said? Why? Al Shum Shepasach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Batei Avaseinu B'Mitzrayim, because God passed over our houses in Egypt. As it says, V'amartem, you shall say, the Torah says, Zevach Pesach Hu LaHashem, this is an offering, a Pesach offering to Hashem, Asher Pasach Al Batei B'nei Yisrael B'Mitzrayim, that you passed over the houses of the Jewish people in Egypt when you smote all the Egyptians, and you saved us, and everyone would bow down. So, this Pesach that they ate in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Why did they eat it in the time of the Beis HaMikdash? Because it's because Hashem skipped over our houses, okay, when he redeemed us. Next, everyone knows this, right? Okay, matzah zush anochlim. This matzah that we're eating now, it doesn't specify the time of the Beis HaMikdash because we're still eating it now. The korban Pesach, we really ate the korban Pesach. If you were a vegetarian, that was fine. You had to eat one kazayas of meat a year, which is a korban Pesach. Okay. So we now have a symbol of it, but the matzah we actually have the same matzah. Matzah zush anu ochlam al shema. This matzah we eat. What's it for? Al shum shlo hispik b'tzeikam shel avaseinu lahachmetz ad shenigla le melech malchem lachem hakadosh baruch hu. They did. The dough had no time to leaven, to become chametz. The Geulah came so fast. Quotes the pasuk. Hashem took us out so fast that the dough didn't rise, and that's why we have matzah. Okay, why do we eat the maror? Maror zushanu ochlim al shema shemaru hamitzrayim es chayav v'seinu, because they made our lives bitter in Mitzrayim. So, question: we eat maror to remember that it was bitter. We eat matzah to remember that Hashem took us out so quickly. We eat Pesach to remember that Hashem skipped over our houses. Okay, if that's why we Pesach matzah maror, okay, we have a little issue. The pasuk says, "V'higadata lebincha bayom hahu." Tell your children on that day. Let me just say something brief here for a second, a little tangent. There are two Yom Tovim, back to back. One starts towards the afternoon, evening of the 14th of Nisan, and it's called Chag HaPesach, and you offer the korban Pesach. And the next one starts at night of the 15th, which is called Chag HaMatzos, in the last 7 days. Okay? Now, we will call the whole thing Pesach, but actually it's Chag HaMatzos. Pesach is the beginning, but you bring the korban Pesach and you eat it on Chag HaMatzos. Okay? Now, it says, "V'higadata lebincha bayom hahu." You should tell your children on that day. That day being Tesvav, the night after you offered korban Pesach, which took a few hours in the afternoon, in the late afternoon. That night, when it got dark, you start Chag HaPesach, and you have the Chag HaMatzos, and you have the Pesach, and you say, "V'higadata lebincha bayom hahu." Tell your children on that day, the Tesvav, okay? Lamor saying, "Ba'avur zeh," on account of this, and you have to eat Pesach, Matzah, Maror together. Right, we know that we still do that in Korech, Matzah, Maror, Pesach. These things, these symbols. On account of these things, Hashem did great miracles for me when He took me out of Mitzrayim. You point to the Pesach, Matzah, Maror. You're looking at the korban Pesach and the Matzah, Maror, and you say, on account of these things, that's why Hashem did miracles for me when He took me out of Mitzrayim. Is something wrong here? If the pasuk would have just said, "V'higadata lebincha bayom hahu," tell your children on that day, Lamor saying, "Zeh ba'avur," this is because, this is on account of the fact that Hashem did great miracles for me when He took me out of Mitzrayim. That would make sense, right? Switch ba'avur zeh to zeh ba'avur. Does everyone understand that? One more time. V'higadata lebincha bayom hahu. Tell your children on that day saying, "Zeh ba'avur," this matzah and Pesach and Maror that we're eating, that's on account of the fact of the miracles that Hashem did, as we just specified what they were. But we don't say that. The pasuk says, "Bavur zeh," on account of this, the Pesach and the Matzah and the Maror. That's why Hashem did great miracles for me. And now, if we understand what that means, then we'll understand the Rasha. Okay, the Rasha says, "Rasha Mahu Omer Maha Avoda Hazot Lachem." What's this hard work? This work you're doing, Lachem v'lo lo, to you and not him. He took himself out of the klal, He took himself out of the unit of the group, and he basically denied the essence. He's kafar bikor. He denied the essential matter. So you blunt his teeth and you say this pasuk, Bavor zeh as Hashem li b'tzeisi miMitzrayim. You use this pasuk to teach him the lesson. Leave lo. Yeah, it would have been me and not you. If you were there, you wouldn't have been redeemed. What is going on? What is this pasuk? You tell them this is what we're saying. Bavor zeh, it's on account of these things. You're denying that. You're excluding yourself. You would have never been redeemed. Okay? So what is happening here? Okay? And then we'll understand why he's called a Russia and what a Russia really is. So my grandfather always taught us this message on Pesach. The idea of, and it's very, very relevant to women too, we'll get to that, the idea of these symbols, okay, that we eat on Pesach. Okay. If we think that they're just symbols that remind us of what happened, we're really not going to have a most meaningful Seder or most meaningful Pesach, and we're really not going to know what we're supposed to convey to our children. What we're supposed to be doing in this week and a half up to Pesach is figuring out how we're going to fulfill this mitzvah of conveying to our children in a way that they can receive it, that they can hear it. Not just children. Anyone who's a child is someone who can learn from you. Anybody sitting at the table, even the lunch meals, people older than you, people younger than you, friends, relatives. How do we fulfill the mitzvah of teaching someone, of conveying to someone in a way that reaches them, and that takes thought, because everybody's reached with different things, this fundamental idea. And that's what we prepare for. The question we're asking is, what do we mean when we say, on account of these things, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim? What does that mean? So if you go back and you think to yourself, what was going on in Mitzrayim that day of the 14th of Nisan into the 15th of Nisan? Because they didn't leave till the next day when it was bright out, right in the middle of the day and with their heads held high in broad daylight. So on the 14th, they shechted the little, carbon Pesach, okay? And then they sat down in their houses and they took the carbon Pesach and they took Maror and they took Matzas, like we do, and they ate it in their houses before Chatzos, before Hashem passed over their houses. As it says, Hashem says, I will come out in the midst of Mitzrayim at Chatzos Halayla. Before Hashem skipped over their houses, before the Geulah took place so quickly that their dough didn't have time to rise, well, way before that. And way before the bitterness was a memory. Why were they eating Pesach, Matza, Maror, which symbolizes the Geulah and the salvation and the memory of bitterness before it even happened? That's the fundamental idea. They were eating these foods out of one motivation and one motivation only. Emunah, that the Nisim that Hashem promised would happen, would really happen. And that's why Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Hashem redeems us from Geulah because we have confidence. We maintain the confidence that the miracles, that the promises Hashem made will definitely take place. And one day, we will understand the much greater symbolism, actually, I don't want to use the word symbolism. We will see the unfolding of the reality of the events that we trusted would happen, but we didn't quite know how they would play themselves out and what they'd look like. We just knew something was going to happen and it would be like this. They had no idea how it would play out. They just knew it would play out some way. And so they ate these things in Mitzrayim on account of that their trust, their Emunah. And that's it. You tell your children on that day. Bavur zeh. Zeh is the Emunah. Zeh keliva anvehu. They pointed at the Yam and they said, This is, my God, it's so crystal clear. Look, this, now we see it. But when they ate it, they didn't know. They had faith in that it would be so clear. So Bavur Zeh, this is the Emunah. That's why Hashem did great things for me when I came out of Mitzrayim. And then we say Pesach, Matza, Maror. Now they symbolize the great things that happened. But Hashem took us out on account of the fact that we trusted that they would come to symbolize the great things that would happen. Now, if a person, we're going through Geulah, there are ups and downs. There are better patches and more difficult patches. There's the way the Geulah works is it doesn't go nice and in a nice systematic way in order from worse to not so bad to a little better to better, even better than that to best. It doesn't go like that. Even in Mitzrayim, it doesn't go like that. Moshe came to Paro, and he spoke in Hashem's name, and he had all the elders of the Jewish people behind him, as you read in Shemos, and everybody was all empowered, felt very empowered and confident. And you know what happened. Paro said, "Oh yeah? I don't think so," and then made the work harder. And Moshe comes back 6 months later, and everybody's furious. They're working, the straw's been taken away from them. They don't want his help. They're frustrated. They don't want to hear anything anymore. They lost hope in the whole thing. Their hopes were dashed. Moshe turns to Hashem and says, "May az bati el Paro. From that time I came to speak to Paro in your name. You haven't saved them, and you've only made it worse." And Hashem said, "You'll see." At the Yam, when they finally saw the culmination of everything, and that was an experience of tzaddik v'tovlo, it's good for the righteous, and rasha v'ralo, and it's bad for the wicked. Not the opposite. When they saw justice, when they saw truth, when everything fit into place, when they got a glimpse of what we've been speaking about, the whole Bria and how it operates and our interaction with it and our role in it, they said, Moshe said, Az Yashir. Now the word Az is very interesting. Az means the future. We're going to sing again. Az also means the past. Even in modern Hebrew, it's past and it's future. It's an odd word. Because the Geulah is not bound by time at all. And that's why if it goes forward and backward and forward and backward, that should not dishearten us. It's exactly what happened in Egypt. For example, the Makos looked like they were going in a very nice progression, one to the next, getting worse and worse. Finally, Makos Bechoros, they leave Mitzrayim, they're free. The yoke is off their shoulders. Hashem is leading them through a desert, and they're going to come to, get the Torah. And then suddenly, from that very high point, when everything is looking bright and the path is straight ahead of them, and they broke out of the shackles of Egypt, right? What happens? 3 days later, the whole Egyptian army seems to have completely forgotten everything that happened, forgotten the whole thing, regrouped, and here they are in hot pursuit. What is that? Can you imagine? You needed probably a very good heart to endure this up and down. And here they are in the desert, and boom. So they come to the Yam Suf, and Hashem says, "Don't worry, I got your back, just walk." So they walk into the Yam Suf. The splitting of the sea does not save the Jewish people at all. It demonstrates Hashem's power, but it certainly doesn't save them because they ran into the sea, and the Egyptians ran in right behind them in full pursuit. So they're in the Yam Suf, in the middle of an ace, somehow, whatever that was to look like, to feel like, or whatever. But they're not saved. Makes no, right? And then when the last Jew is somehow out on the banks of the other side, then, and the nace that Hashem runs the world, Hashem demonstrated that nace has, run its course. The nace is over. The waters collapse. Everything goes back to normal, and that, and only then, now the Egyptians are drowned. So, and suddenly they turn around, and then they see that finally they're saved. And the experience was so shocking, and I guess it happened in a way that was so, so confusing, confusing, but overwhelming, that they're standing on the other side, and this happens to us in our life also. Sometimes we're on the other side of something, and we don't exactly know how it all just fell into place. And in fact, in the Shira, because the nace was so beyond them, and it happened in a way that the nace was the nace. It wasn't the same as the drowning as the Egyptians. The nace part is not mentioned in the Shira. Do you know that? There's only one pasuk that talks about the splitting of the sea, and it doesn't say it clearly. It says, Baruach apecha nermu mayim, with the gust from your nose, the water ne'ermu. And Onkelos doesn't translate it split at all. Onkelos says it was acted with chachma. It's, let the Jews in, let the Egyptians in, and then and then collapsed on the Egyptians. It's like it was when sometimes we experience something so beyond us that saves us, that's part of our salvation. We don't exactly know how it all happened and how it just somehow in the end we're on the other side and it happened quickly. It was, in this case, it was such a revelation of the supernatural. It was hard to process. What the Shira is about is the collapsing of the waters, the normal teva being restored, the normal way of nature restored, and that leading to the salvation of the Jewish people. In any case, the Geulah doesn't go systematically. So this is the thing. When we're in Gullus, what's required of us, and it's the same today as it was back then, and this is what we can tell our kids. This is what we have to start thinking about. Stories from our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents of how they had Emunah in the Gullus, that the Nisim would take place, maybe not even for their generation, maybe for their children and their grandchildren's generation, that there would be a Yeshua, that all the mitzvahs we do, all the Emunah we have, all the trust we have, every time we're Moser Nefesh to do the right thing, every time we hold our line where we live by our guiding principles, because we know it makes sense and it's worth it and it's going to, we're gonna see the whole thing one day. That is an avoda. That is a very hard work for the Jewish people in Gullus. And that's where all of our ancestors succeeded, because we're here. We're here. So the Rasha, what's a Rasha? If you look in the first parak of Tehillim, where the Rasha is mentioned, the Radak explains what a Rasha is. We've spoken about this. Ashrei ha'isha shelo halach be'atzas rishayim. How fortunate is the person who never went with the advice of the Rishayim. So what's a Rasha? Actually, the Even Ezra speaks about it too. I'll use the Even Ezra. So the word Rasha, kimilat Rishayim, this is the word Rasha. We often use the word to mean a horrible person, but that's someone who really hates the Jewish values, the Jewish people, hates God, chas v'sholom, I don't want to say. The opposite, we say the opposite. Blesses Hashem, we mean the opposite. We call them either, depending on exactly how they express themselves, an oyev or a soneh, an enemy or a hater, but not a Rasha. Rasha is used generally today to mean everybody, but there's an accurate definition of Rasha. And the Even Ezra says, Kimilat Rishayim Heim She'einam Omdim Amatchonet Achat. They don't stay in one, they're not centered. They cannot stay in one stable place. They're always lurching from side to side, emotion to emotion, whatever drives them, whatever buttons are pushed, whatever impulses, is generated. They just can't maintain a steady position. They can't stay on a straight and narrow. They're always falling off to this side or that side, getting back on, lurching here, then coming back to the center, lurching over here, coming back to the center. That's what we say, Rishayim Malayim Charata. Rishayim, they're always regretful. It's someone who cannot hold the line. They're always... Now, why is this person called a Rasha? And he brings, let me give you examples. Kederach, he brings a pasuk from Yeshayahu. Harishayim kiyam migrash, ki hashket lo yochal. They're like a churning sea that cannot be quiet. It's always another wave and crashing. It's not just a calm flow. It's always ups and downs. Or he quotes from Shmuel Aleph. Uvachein b'chol asher yifnei yashia. Everywhere he turned, people ran in chaos, ran in panic. There's other examples too, but the word Rasha means chaos, panic, lurching, not quiet, not settled, not still, not consistent. Okay? So what is this person, a Rasha? So we say like this. The Rasha is all over the place. Is all over the place. He's a drifter. He's inspired, then he's not inspired. He's motivated, not motivated. He does buy in, then he buys out. He can't hold the line. What? And he says, you know why? He says, Ma ha'avoda hazos lachem. What is this avoda? And perhaps the avoda he's talking about is the hard work. We know avoda always means avoda shebalev, right? Avoda means avoda shebalev. It means the work you do in your heart. Whenever the Torah says, the first time the Torah uses the word right in the beginning of creation, it says there was no rain, Ki Adam ayin lavod es hadama, because no man was there to work the earth. There was no work necessary in Gan Eden. So Chazal Rashi says, avoda means avoda shebalev. There's nobody to pray, to recognize the connection between here and there, upper worlds and the lower worlds. Avoda is the avoda shebalev. It's not just the avoda of the Korban Pesach. He's dismissing something much bigger than that. He's dismissing the avoda, the work the Jewish people have done throughout all of history internally, of committing themselves, and praying is a huge part of this tefillah, committing themselves to the Emunah that we will see these nisim, that were Hashem guaranteed us. We will definitely see the nisim. The Emunah that it takes, the tefillah that it takes, the staying consistent with that trust in Hashem, that is very hard avoda. And he says, Ma havoda hazot lachem. I can't do this. Lachem below low, you but not me. And he took himself, Lefisha hotzi es atzmo min haklal kafar bikar. He takes himself out of the whole klal of Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael as a nation, the ones that are still here, unfortunately, if a person couldn't hold on to the Emunah, they would drift off. Those were the people that would intermarry. You can't stay strong. People that couldn't stay strong with the trust, to hold on with the Torah, with the mitzvahs, even longer, it'll all ultimately, play itself out. It'll all come to the culmination that is promised of the Geulah, of the Malakal Eretz Deis Hashem, and the whole thing. If you can't hold on to that and convey that to your kids to hold on to it, he takes himself out in kafar be'ikar, and you might want to say he denies the ikar. The ikar is the ikar of Am Yisrael, to have this emunah that our Avos had and our ancestors had in Egypt. So what do you say to him? You say, but why am I doing all this tonight? Because Bavor Zeh Asa Hashem Li B'Tzeisi Mitzrayim is on account of the Emunah that we even got out of Mitzrayim. They were even a nation. That's why Hashem took us out. Because we trusted that the Nisim would happen. That's the one thing that you can't exclude yourself from. If you exclude yourself from that powerful force in Am Yisrael, which is our Emunah, okay? What will happen is, first of all, you wouldn't have been redeemed. There's no redemption for someone who can't hold on to the trust and redemption. And the person's called a Rasha because in the end, it's not that he's the worst person that ever lived, but in the end, if a person can't hold on to the vision, the trust, the emunah, that the mitzvahs are still relevant and we still do them no matter all the opposition against us, no matter how much we see people slacking off, how much people say, what does Hashem care if I do this or that, which is, we've been speaking about that. No matter how much we get disheartened by the very fact that the Geulah is long and confusing for us, and you see things in the religious community, which is such a small part of the Jewish community, that we don't like and make no sense. You see, it's hard to hold on in this Geulah. It's very hard. But the one thing that anchors us, even to hold on to the proper, normal derech of Judaism, which is there's so many things that people say that they fight for and they promote in the name of Torah Judaism. That's sheker. Okay? Anytime there's real breach in traditional halacha in the name of Torah. Or violent demonstrations that are destructive in the name of Torah. Or lack of kavod abrios and calling other people, Jewish people, terrible names in the name of Torah. Or twisting and distorting the law and coming up with new halachas in the name of Torah. And it's disheartening. But nevertheless, this is the avoda. Through it all, each and every person and each family goes back, thinks about their ancestors, people that inspired them, communities that we came from, that had this emunah and knew that there'd be Geulah one day, and passed it on to us and told us Gam Geulah Tova, and Hashem is with us, and keep the mitzvahs anyway, and the promises are going to come true. This is the avodah, and a person who can't hold on to that, by definition, they're not going to stay strong. They're not going to stay connected. They're going to be here and there and all over the place because they don't have a clear vision, guiding principles. And therefore, when a person doesn't have that clear vision, it's easy to drop off. It's easy to deny the value of our consistency, of our hard work. It's easy to lose faith and just give in because out of weakness. It's just easier. So that person, by definition, will not be consistent. I'm going to take Javi's question 1 second. By the way, the opposite of a rasha is a tzaddik, and tzaddik means consistency. In the halacha, when we're talking about business, so a person, let's say, sells flour, and somebody comes in and they want to buy a pound of flour. So you have a scale, and on one side of the scale you put a weight that's exactly a pound, and on the other side of the scale then you can balance it exactly, put a pound of flour. In Torah, those weights are called even tzedek. A proper amount of liquid that's precisely a hin or a liter or whatever it is today is called a hin tzedek. It's a mitzvah to have precise measurements. They're called tzedek. Tzedek is consistent. It's always exactly what it is. And a rasha is inconsistent. How do you stay consistent? We must have guiding principles. And the essential guiding principle is the Emunah, like our ancestors did. Let me take Javi's first.
It seems from your definition and what you're just saying that the whole point of the Haggadah is an appeal directed to the Rasha, which it sounds like a lot of us...
No, the main message of the Haggadah, I'm just focusing on Russia right now, the message of the Haggadah, I'm trying to say this, the mitzvah of Seder night, which takes creativity to figure out how we're going to convey to the people, who we are with, something that will reach them, that will inspire them to still have emunah and be strong and hold on and devote themselves to the mitzvahs to do them even better, and to daven, to be able to daven even better, and to have emunah despite how many difficult things we hear about, and both collectively and individually, so that we know we can still, like Miriam told her father, I know how black and bleak it is and how you're losing hope and you don't see the point of even having any more children. But although it looks like pitch black night in Mitzrayim, it's actually almost daybreak. Right? That is a koach, by the way, that is unique and special to women. It's called bina. Bina shows it from the shorish bain, between two things. My grandfather always taught us this. We make a bracha every morning. Anosein l'sechvi bina lahavchin ben yom uben laila. You give the rooster bina to distinguish between night and day. Now, everybody knows that in order to distinguish between night and day, you don't need any intellectual capacity. You simply need eyesight, day or night. So what in the world do we mean when we say that the rooster has insight, sechvi has bina, some kind of bina, to distinguish ben yom v'layla, night and day? What kind of insight does it take? Exactly. If you've ever been awoken by a rooster, the rooster crows when it's pitch black outside. The rooster knows that this pitch blackness of this moment is no longer night. It is pitch black, but it's actually the early morning. It's the blackness, it's the darkness of the dawn. The rooster can see that it's dawn when it still looks like night outside. Miriam saw, that's Bina Yisera that women have. Miriam saw that it was pitch black in Mitzrayim, so dark and bleak that her parents said, they gave up. What's worth having kids? And she said, no. There will be a Geulah. You just have to act as if you're sure that it's going to happen. Have children because it's going to happen. Act as if it happened. Act as if it already happened. And then you'll see that how it actually will happen. This was also not just Miriam. This is the Nashim Tzidkanios in Mitzrayim who went out to their husbands in the fields when they were exhausted and disheartened, and they inspired. They came, they encouraged them, they encouraged them to have children, so that there would be a Geulah. This is a very special, unique trait of women. 1 second, I just want to say one thing. Bina is not something that you just automatically have perfectly because you're a woman. Bina is definitely associated with women, with the female koach, but it has to be cultivated, and it's only cultivated and it only grows from, like anything, from hard work and involvement in emunah. It doesn't just spontaneously spring up. A person has to work on emunah and work on whatever thing. Let me give you an example. When you go, why does a person want to, when they have, let's say, a very precarious medical condition? Okay, they want to go to a doctor who has 30, 40 years experience and who's dealt with this type of thing 15,000 times. Why? Because from dealing with something 15,000 times, as soon as they assess the situation, they pick up on cues, little cues that they learned from intense involvement with this particular type of thing, and they could pick up on a cue that no one else would notice, and then act, figure out what to do on the spot in an instant. They just get it. They get it. That's a bina, that's intuition that comes from tremendous amount of experience. If we want to have this bina, that we're able to see what something's going to be before it happens, we're able to trust in the nisim in the future before they even happen. First, we work on really having emunah in day-to-day life, when things aren't so great, when things look depressing, when we feel our efforts are, failing. We tried so hard, but we failed. Emunah in those issues, emunah in day-to-day practical things, and then we can have emunah in what hasn't even happened and what's, what we're counting on. So it's just not like. And I want to add one more thing about emunah. Then I'm going to stop and take your questions. At the Shira, on the Yam, it's very important. Moshe and the Jewish people sang Shira. After the Torah completes the Shira that Moshe led at the end, which means they're already on the seashore. We know when they sang Shira. On the seashore, finally, looking behind them, the bodies of all these Egyptians were strewn around on the seashore. All their gold and their precious, all their treasures were strewn around for the Jewish people. They sang Shira. But when the Shira's over, there's one more pasuk. And it says about Miriam, that Miriam took the castanets, little drum castanets, right? And she started to sing Shira too. But you know what the pasuk says? Ki ba sus paro v'rochbo b'soch hayam. When did Miriam start singing Shira? Ki means when. Ki ba sus paro v'rochbo b'toch hayam. When did the women already start singing Shira? When the Egyptians, the horse and the chariots entered the sea. Way before the nays happened, that the waters collapsed. That's greater. You hear that? Ki ba, we say it all the time. It's referring to Miriam. Ki ba sus pa rochbo so chayam. When they came, when they just entered the Yam. That's when Miriam and the women started singing Shira. So we have this story of the women who were able to celebrate the nisim before they happened. Right? That is the fundamental message of Seder night. Not remembering what happened, but bavur zeh, on account of this emunah. That's why we're going to be redeemed. That's where a person who loses hope loses their own capacity for personal redemption. If anybody has any trouble, something they're struggling through, if they lose hope, they're lost. Hope is trust that it will be, personally and as a nation. So if somebody comes out of Pesach inspired by something we said to be stronger and be more confident and try again and not get disheartened by what they see and what they hear, and do the mitzvahs and commit themselves more to learning and learning with others and learning for themselves and strengthening their roots. That is a successful Pesach. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Bonnie. What?
From the minute you started thinking,
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think of the people that survived the Holocaust with their Emunah intact.
Yeah.
And that was
It's amazing.
a much closer timeline
Yeah.
to the Emunah that
Yeah.
you're referring to.
Well, all those people that had Emunah through the ages, I mean, we all have stories. This is what we bring to the Seder. Yeah.
I just heard something from Reverend Bina Finer. She quoted a famous Rav whose name I can't remember. But she said in Shir HaShirim that we read on Pesach, there's an actual reference to an apple tree that the shepherd will meet under the apple tree. And she says this refers to the woman seducing their husbands to have more children under the apple tree. And that's why we have apple in our chavoses.
Oh, very nice.
That before.
Very
So I
nice.
thought that was very nice. And Rabbi Palkovitz Tuesday night said something unbelievable from the Rav that I never, ever really thought about. When you think about what's going on in the world today with slave mentality and when they're freed or they try to be free in Syria or what happened down south years ago, they rebel. They try slaughtering their masters. The rebellion of Nat Turner. You saw this over and over again. What happened when the Jews were freed? Rav Palkovitz says, Rav Soloveitchik says, Hashem said, stay in your houses together. They didn't go out. There was no rebellion. You never saw
rioting.
that in history.
No rioting.
You never saw that. Look
No
what type
rioting.
of people we are. They talk about moral equivalency. We are a moral people, and this is what we do.
This is, and it's even beyond moral people. This is a beautiful idea from Rav Hirsch. The first step, okay, to breaking away and establishing for ourselves who we are, what our center is, what our guiding principles are, and that we have a right to excuse ourselves from whatever is going on in the world and, in a sense, establish our own parameters and live in them and commit to them. Rav Hirsch says the first thing that happened was Hashem told the slave nation, go into your own houses and close your doors. You have your own space. The four walls where you are entitled to establish your own world with your own values, that you secure yourself against every, the first thing is that we have individuality, family units, and the very important thing in order to be strong and to hold on, you need a community. Nobody can do anything on their own alone. I mean, you can, but it's much, much, much harder. A community provides strength, provides support, provides, if somebody is in the community is down, there's a lot of other people that are up. Somebody needs, is in a difficult time, other people are have the strength, have the wherewithal to give. A community helps everybody together progress forward. Being part of a community and contributing to the community is such an important factor in keeping Am Yisrael strong. And just, Baruch Hashem, as we have a beautiful community here in the 5 towns. Everyone really does pull together. It's in so many times, in so many ways, for each other. It's such a beautiful thing, what we just did, Kesher Yudi, with the Israelis. But even beyond that, I think also drawing on the strength of the community and contributing our strengths also, that's, a fundamental thing that, the Am Yisrael became a community, really. On Pesach, we became one people who united, walked out together. Everybody, as we know, tied together in Achdus. Everybody understands that Achdus is the glue. We come to Matza and Torah as a nation, one nation, united, and that's how we get the Torah. It's a progression from dispersal, to,
My question is about a word.
What word?
Bina. My whole life I learned that Bina was a havin davar mitoch davar. To understand from within understanding. Understanding is seichel. Understanding is the mind, not Emunah. It basically, Emunah is the inside. Seichel is the mind. Bina is to understand something that's the difference between Chachma and Bina. There's a depth to that understanding. So I don't see it as...
In order to have Chachma, Reishis Chachma, Yiras Hashem, you can't have Chachma doesn't operate in a vacuum. You have to have some parameters for where your Chachma can what you're going to recruit your Chachma for. So there are parameters. Parameters are Yiras Hashem, which means we're aware of Hashem's existence and governance of us. And I definitely believe Emunah, these are fundamental overriding paradigms or truths, such as Emunah in the nisim that are guaranteed to happen. Unless you're working within that framework, what do you do with your Chachma? And how do you assess anything correctly? Chachma there's really, there's something above Chachma, okay, which is the root of all truths. And then Chachma comes and assesses them, looks at them, and then Bina comes and starts to analyze them in detail. So, we can talk all about this, but Chachma and Bina are not the first steps. There's guiding principles above them, guiding truths above them. So I would say that the Emunah is an overwhelming, what's the word I'm looking for? All encompassing, yeah, like, a foundational, right, or a root truth. And then through the perspective of that Emunah, our Chachma assesses things, and then our Bina and analyzes every little detail of it, and also is able to identify almost imperceptible aspects of it. Yeah.
I'd like to add something to the women's Emunah.
Yes.
When Moshe Rabbeinu asked for contributions to the Mishkan, the women brought their mirrors. And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want the mirrors. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, these mirrors are chavivim alai. Because with these mirrors, the women had the Emunah to go out, make themselves beautiful, go out to their husbands, have children, and continue B'nai Yisrael. And with these mirrors, they made the kiyar, which was used in Tahara Mishkan. A testimony
Beautiful.
to women.
Yeah. All right, everybody, have a wonderful Pesach if I don't see you.